Have you ever noticed that there's no shortage of help for couples to be at their best, to communicate well, to enjoy their partnership, their marriages, whatever? There's a book on every aspect of it. There's courses, there's classes, and so on. And they all have one thing in common. They don't work. Now, why is that? Why do people buy all these things, do all the classes, read all the books, listen to all the CDs, listen to all the podcasts, and still it doesn't work? Well, there's one very good reason, because the research that goes into writing these books is done on people who already have good relationships. They didn't have to work at it. They didn't have to do anything big or different to what they were already doing in their regular lives. It came naturally to them. So for those people who are struggling and who have challenges and who work really hard but are not finding the success that they want, those kind of connections are not going to help. And here's the reason why. There's fear involved, there's insecurity, there's all sorts of past history that you bring in that's going to stop those things from working. So I'll give you an example of a couple that I used to work with and some of their challenges and how I helped them. So the couple I worked with were in their mid-30s. They were both professional people, both in the health industry, and they had had previous relationships. In fact, one of them had been married before and the other one had been engaged but didn't get married. And they had known each other for a long while, decided to get married in the end, and they had immense challenges because both of them had fears that their past was going to come and repeat itself. So let's call her Jane, was terrified that she was going to not understand her husband and that he would find someone else and leave her, and that so she had to work really, really hard. She was anxious and she was always trying to kind of anticipate problems before they even came up, and then she'd get frustrated because her husband, Stephen, wasn't really in a place to talk. He came from a family where people didn't talk about feelings. He kind of did everything by himself. He didn't need to share anything. In fact, he thought that if he did, he would actually be weak, and he'd be showing Jane that he was a bit of a wimp, and then what would she do? She might decide that this wasn't the right guy for her and she might leave. So both of them were coming from a place of fear that if Jane actually didn't anticipate Stephen's problems, he would leave her and find someone else. And Stephen came from a place of fear that he actually expressed his feelings and told Jane whatever he was going through, that she would then think of him as weak and a wimp and disappear. Now, you can read every book in the world, and it's going to tell you to be open, to share your feelings, to communicate, to be vulnerable, to have empathy, and so on. And I've done it myself, and I keep advising that. But what I also do is give you this extra special tidbit. First, you have to work on the fears, because those are going to color the lenses through which you look through. You can't just suddenly decide to communicate openly and share feelings if at the back of your mind you're afraid that it's not going to work or actually work against you. So no matter how much you resolve to do what all the gurus say, you're not going to be able to do it. And if you try to do it, it won't come out very well. It will actually look messy, and it'll create more problems in the long run. So here's what I have found, and I'm going to give you my own advice that I used with Jane and Stephen. Jane was afraid that if she didn't do things in advance and kind of figure everything out, Stephen would feel uncared for and find someone else. So she was kind of ahead of the game. Stephen, on the other hand, was lagging behind the game because he thought that if he actually showed up and described his feelings and connected on that level, he would lose Jane because she'd think of him as silly. So one was ahead of the game and the other one was behind the game. They were not walking together. So what I shared with them was to think about them both growing, but in different ways. Jane had to kind of be more in the moment and think more about how she was feeling and Stephen was feeling in the moment, and just tune in to the present so that she didn't overreach and cause more problems in the long run. Stephen, on the other hand, was thinking about the past, like if he did this, then this would happen, and what happened before, and things like that. So one was in the past, one was in the present, and then they would kind of switch roles. Jane would think, oh, this is what happened in the past, so I shouldn't do it again. Then Stephen would think, well, if I do this, then so and so and so and so. So he was in the future. So both of them were never in the present. They weren't holding hands in the journey together. If one went to therapy and the other didn't, they'd be afraid that one would grow and the other wouldn't. So basically what I helped them to do is to think about taking steps together. They would decide day to day, week to week, what they wanted to do together in terms of sharing an event, an incident, a plan, an experience, a feeling, whatever it was. They would do something together at the same time and be present. And while they were doing it, I asked them to share what their biggest fears were at that moment of doing it, so that they were totally in the present. Each one knew what their partner's fears were in the moment. They could understand it, they could empathize with it, because they were going through it themselves. They didn't have to manufacture empathy where it didn't exist. And very slowly, by doing it in those tiny baby steps, they started to take steps together. Yes, sometimes when one ran faster than the other, and sometimes one took steps backwards while the other went forward. But in our work together, we kept on trying to maintain a steady pace and try to rebalance and reconfigure the step at a time, the one step at a time, so that neither of them were afraid that one would grow and the other would lag, or one would get tired and the other one would be abandoned. That's how you can actually work in your couple's activities to make the couple experience not only valuable and meaningful, but give you a sense of togetherness, that you're both on this journey together, taking the steps together, instead of one going too fast or one going too slow, or even moving in different directions. If you can do that, you won't need any books, because you're kind of doing it as you go along, and it's really about taking steps together as you grow, rather than either trying to catch up or be ahead of the game. And you'll find that it works really, really well. And now please do me a favor and tell me, as we went along in the steps that I just told you, what were your feelings? What were your memories? What were your experiences? Share them in the moment and take part in the activities that I'm sharing with you. We're going to do it right now. So let me know what works for you, what doesn't work for you, how you felt about what I just said. Does it bring back any memories? Let me know what else you'd like me to help you with. And I promise I'll respond.